Hello everybody and welcome back to SIG Blender. In this tutorial we'll be going over the basics of modeling, how to take an object like a cube and give it form and shape to resemble something like it's in the real world. I like modeling. I think it's one of the most fun parts of Blender because you're really just creating something out of nothing. And it's really just a fun time overall. But before we do that, I'm just going to do one thing for you guys. I'm going to turn on an extension that allows you to see my keys. I don't know if I did this in the last tutorial, but I'm actually re-recording this tutorial because I lost it. So this is actually the last tutorial I'm recording. But in case I haven't explained this to you before, down here it's going to show you whatever buttons I press, as you can see there, so you can follow along easier as I go through things. So, in this part of the tutorial, we're actually diving into stuff. We're going to be learning how to do the basics of modeling, but before we do that, we have to go over the basics of object controlling. So, how do I move around this cube? Now that I have it selected, by the way. Make sure you have a cube selected. Well, as you can see over in this left toolbar, there's three main transforms, which you probably know from your high school geometry class. There's translate, which is G, the hotkey. And you can basically just move the object around. There's rotate, and the hotkey is R, rotates the object around. And then there's scale, which hotkey is S, and that scales the object. Wow. So those aren't too precise, you can't really do too much with those right now. But one way to add more precision is to give it an axis in which you're going to perform that transform. So for example, if I just hit SZ, that scales just in the Z. So scaling like that, that's just S. SZ scales just in the Z. If I hit GY, it moves the object just in the Y axis. Another way to do this is if you hit Shift and then an axis, it does that transform on all axes but the axis you hit. It ignores one axis. So if I hit, for example, G Shift Z, the object will move on the X and Y planes, but not the Z plane. It won't move up or down at all. It'll just move left, right, and forward and back. If I hit S Shift X, it scales in everything but the X axis. So the X axis will remain the same, though Z and Y will change. And then one final way to add precision is to give a number. So if I say like scale X 0.5, that scales the X exactly in half. Scale X 1.25. You can see how much you're scaling in this bottom right area. You can see it says like 5, and now it says 3. I can't really point it out with my mouse because I'm using it to do the scale, but it's like down there, here-ish. Alright, so that's the basics of object transforming. And so as we know, when we're in from the previous video, we're in object mode right now, so we're dealing with objects, complete objects. But if you hit tab, you go into edit mode, and that is now we're messing with points and lines and faces. And so all the things I just told you about transforms, you can do with points and lines and faces. So if I sort of scale the Z of a face, actually that would make sense, scale the X of a face. See, that works. If I rotate the Y, rotate the X maybe, yeah, look at that. Now you can see you can do all these sorts of things to this object that we weren't able to do before. Alright. So, all these like transforms, they're useful, but they're not the most useful tools. I'm going to go now into the more useful tools, and these I'm going to be finding in this little area down here, mostly in this add bit of the toolbox. I'm going to highlight some of the hotkeys and some of the tools that I find really useful in modeling. The first one is this one at the top. It's extrude. If I select a face and I hit E, you see it creates a whole new bit of that face. It extrudes that face out to make a polygon out of it. If you hit Alt A, there's all different types of extrude. So there's extrude region, which is what we just did. And then there's also vertex normal and individual face. The difference between that, I'll show you. If I just hit E right now, this is normal extrude. It just made a whole new cube after I had everything selected. If I extrude the vertex normals, it'll just make that cube bigger and have that little cube be inside. And if I extrude individual faces, it'll extrude each face out but not connect them in the way that vertex normals does. So that's the difference between the three different extrudes. They're all very useful. Extruding is one of the most useful tools in modeling. You can also extrude a line to be a face. So extruding a face makes a polygon, extruding a line makes a face, and extruding a point makes a line. Alright, the next tool is going to be Inset. You do this to faces. The hotkey is I, and it makes a smaller face with surrounding 4 other faces around it. So you just saw it right there. It's pretty useful for adding complexity to a face. If you need to make one face have more stuff on it, you can, like, for example, do that, something like that. All right, the next tool is beveling. We do this to lines, edges, and the hotkey is Ctrl B, and it takes a line and it turns it into a face like that. So it's a pretty useful one. All right, so the next one is you do it when you have a collection of points, but they aren't a face. If you select them and press F, you make a face there. Now that's really useful if you have, certain like points that you want to connect that aren't connected yet, or if you accidentally delete a face that you want, you can just select all your points and press F. All right. One more that's pretty useful is subdividing. So that's if you hit W to go to the specials and click subdivide, you can see it cuts all your faces into, or whatever faces you have selected, into however many cuts you want. And that's a really easy and useful way to add complexity. So now we can, like, for example, do something like that. All right. And now it's time for my favorite tool, and that is this guy right here, the loop cut. What a loop cut is it takes a theoretical loop around a face like that, and it makes it. So the hotkey is Ctrl R, and then you put your cursor against an edge, and it cuts that. If you scroll, it adds more like, I guess, loops, I guess they're called. And then after you click, you can move them around. Oh, I fucking love loop cuts. They're definitely one of the most useful tools that beginners don't know about. A lot of beginners know about extruding and beveling and whatever, but they don't know about loop cuts, and loop cuts are so good. Anyway, we're getting to the end. One of the last ones I'm going to talk about is merge. So if you have 2 points selected and hit Alt M, you can choose to merge them at the first point you selected, the last point you selected, or at the center. At the center. And then you can also go at the cursor. This is your 3D cursor, by the way. I don't know if I introduced you to the 3D cursor, but there it is. And then the final tool I'm going to be introducing you to is the knife tool down here. If you hit K, it starts the knife tool. And this is basically cutting your own lines out. So if I click on this point and this point, hit enter, you can see it created a line there. Some other useful things about the knife tool: if you hit Control, it automatically goes to midpoints. So that's really useful. You can do something like, you have to be careful when you use the knife tool because you might mess it up. It's very iffy sometimes, but nonetheless, it's a very useful one. And just in case you haven't noticed, this bottom right corner down here, by where the axis is, like down here where view is, it's always very useful when doing these kinds of things. You get to see what you're doing. So those are all the basic tools, and with these tools we'll now be going on to creating more complex shapes. From this tutorial on, we'll be working towards one goal, and that is to model this very pretty scene that I came up with. I like it a lot. Considering this is the last tutorial, I know how it comes out, but the match from the next tutorial will not. But I can promise you the thing we make looks very pretty, almost as pretty as this weird shape I'm making right now. I hope to see you in the next tutorial. I hope that you go on to work with me and model our very pretty model together. Anyway, see you in the next one.